Hey everybody, I'm Joe Tobias, and this is my favorite 14 photos of 2019. I know 14 sounds like way too many, and if you were just hoping for just like 10, then I guess go to this time right here, and then you skip the first 4, because then you'll only have 10. Anyway, we're into the new year now, and I'm sure I kind of missed that window of like when we're supposed to be looking back, and now we're all supposed to be looking forward. But I didn't make the video, and I'm going to make it now. And with that, yesterday I was scrolling through just deep into my Instagram feed, back toward the very beginning, to kind of look at the various years and stuff. And as I was going through, I saw a lot of photos that like, oh my gosh, I was super embarrassed by. Also saw a bunch of stuff back when Instagram was just about this is what I'm doing right now and not as much of a curated feed, at least for me. And I don't know, there's something kind of fun about that. But especially as I was going through, I saw so many photos that, like, yeah, there's plenty of photos that I'm super cringeworthy of and I hope just never get seen by anybody else. But there's a lot of photos I saw that I was like, you know, there's actually something there. There's something that I do want to remember. And with that, there's a lot of stuff that I want to see and I want to go through, and the little bits and pieces of something that became a thing, and things that I see, or photos that like maybe I didn't think as much about then, and now it's like, oh, that's part of my style. That makes so much sense in the trajectory in who I've become as a photographer. I look back on, even with these embarrassing photos, the person that I am, the photographer that I am, is because I took those photos. And rather than just trying to shove them under the rug, I want to actually take time to be inspired by my own work. It's really easy to be inspired by other people. I think we all do that all the time, whether that is scrolling Instagram, whether that's going to blogs, whether that's even getting like photo books and learning from the masters. It's really easy to always intentionally be looking at outsiders, but especially as someone who wants to get hired, or for me as a wedding photographer, I want to also make sure I'm continue to be inspired by my own work, because clients are hiring for me, not who I'm into. If they were into that other person, they probably would go hire them instead. And so, while as much as I want to continue to push myself and to develop new skills, I also want to make sure I take time to go back and look at what I have done and make sure that I'm able to incorporate that into the work I'm doing. And so, as I go through these quick 14 photos here of the year, I'm going to tell you about them, but I also want to tell you just a little bit of what I want to take away and what I want to take from that photo to continue doing and to make more part of the work that I'm doing here in 2020. I also do want to note, I'm not going to include any photos from my recent trips to Nepal and then also the Bali, Singapore trip in this video, just because I don't feel like I'm quite totally done with those photos yet. But with that, the first 4 photos that I'm going to share here are all from my heifer trip that I took to Ecuador back in February. This first one was in the Central Andes, and we'd been working with a community member, and I followed her out into the field where she was harvesting wheat to feed her alpacas and her sheep. And she was a character. Like, it was a fun afternoon. We were laughing. She was a really good interview, and the whole walk out, we've been chatting and stuff, and just like just having a good time. And so we got out there. I took a bunch of pictures of her cutting down and using a scythe and working on there to cut the hay for her alpaca, and her alpaca was standing there, and it was a lot of like cute little photos and stuff. But there's this last one as she had bundled it all up and was about to throw it onto her back, and she's short. She's like, ooh, I'm gonna go like 4'8" or something, like a really tiny woman. And so she bends down and is about to pick it up, and right as she stands up, she looks over and right into my camera lens and gives this smile for this photo here. And it was this moment of just like, can you believe this is happening? And I love that. And what I want to take away from this photo is the memory that, and the knowledge that, like, the more you get to know people, the more that you invest in them, the more you're going to be able to get into a photo. Because, like, her laughter isn't a necessary self-deprecating one of just like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? Or towards me, you're like, what are you doing here? But it was more of just like, what a life we're leading. How are we doing this? And it was hilarious. And in that, like, her face just lit up and we were having a real moment together. And that came from time, that came from experience. And so to remember to always invest in the subjects that I'm photographing. This second photo that I want to share here is from later in the trip. After being in the Andes for a while with alpaca farmers, we flew to the Amazon where we were photographing and working with cacao farmers. So this woman, Digna, is in her cacao farm, and she's cutting down the pods there that then we'll harvest and roast and turn into cacao, or for her, she actually would make a liqueur with it. But I love this photo because it's so much chaos in leading your lines, leading your face, leading your view into the work that she's doing. And that's what I want to take away from this photo, is that that intentionally being able to put all of the elements in a frame and tell a story and aim it at your subject, and finding ways to use chaos as a way that there's so much chaos that it drives your attention into the subject of the photo. So on to photo number 3. And this is another photo that was from the Amazon region while working with Heifer, and it's kind of like the exact opposite of the last one. And so in this photo, what I want to take away from it is simplicity. It is finding a way to isolate your subject, and this is something that I don't feel like I do very well. There are a lot of other photographers that are really good at isolating their subjects and making all the other backgrounds go away. For in this photo, I was following this woman named Magola, and we were going out into the field to cut yucca plants for her to make for lunch. And so we'd walk through this cornfield, which is kind of interesting. I was trying to follow her, and then she pops out of the cornfield into this just sea of green, just the deepest greens I've ever seen. And it was super green because it also was about to start just absolutely raining, and so the greens got even darker and more ominous, and but with that, her red shirt just pops off the screen. And so thinking of ways, this is something that definitely was very a reactionary photo, but as I want to be better about thinking through my photos, planning them out, like how can I find a way to have these complementary colors, these colors that the red is going to stand off of the green, this one element is going to stand out of a pretty monochromatic, simple backdrop, and how can I find a way to use simplicity to drive your attention to the subject of the photo. Real quick, huge shout to Canon for making lenses and cameras that can withstand this kind of weather. Well done, guys. So to photo number 4, and this last one from Ecuador. This is my favorite portrait from Ecuador, and this is a woman named Rosa, and I had loved spending time with her. She was a wonderful interview. She was so open, she was joyous, she just made us feel right at home, but at the same point was also super honest about the hard life that she had led up to that point, and with having a partner leave her, and all kinds of other difficulties and stuff. She's one of the few people that I've had who've opened up so much that they felt comfortable crying while I was videotaping them, which is like a really honoring and humbling experience to say that this person trusts me to tell their story. And we'll have videos that will come out from Heifer on her in the future. But the thing I want to take away from this photo is just her strength. Just the strength of her eyes in this photo is it is undeniably how reasonably powerful this woman is that she is able to get through so much in life, and it comes out in her eyes. And I don't know how to do this again. This is something that I keep studying with this photo and trying to figure out, like, why does her eyes feel so strong in this photo? But it's the thing that I want to keep coming back to, because that is an element, especially as I work with nonprofits, and we're usually interviewing people who are success stories, who are showing that this is what the organization has done to improve people's lives, and to find ways to photographically say, look at this amazingly strong person, look at what they're able to do through adversity. And I think that that's what this photo really does well. So we're on to photo number 5. We're gonna get out of Ecuador. I'm a dad, come on. If I'm gonna go through my 14 favorite photos of the year, you definitely knew that I was gonna have a couple of my daughter Lena. So this is one of my favorites just because Lena's so fun. It was such a beautiful photo. And so we were coming back from a camping trip, and we were waiting at the ferry to go across to come back into Seattle. And she was crying on my lap, and just looked back and, wait a second. This means Eric actually took that photo, didn't it? It probably shouldn't. Whatever, it's super cute, enjoy it. I guess these are my 13 favorite photos I took, and my other favorite photo of the year. Whoops, oh well. So, in that case, we're gonna move on to this photo, and I absolutely love this photo because, again, I feel like it really tells the story of a relationship, and then especially within the context of a wedding. For Kendra and Grayson, their dog Mosby is their world. That little pup is, little's not the right word because he's this massive Bernese Mountain Dog, and is the derpiest dog I've ever known, but is so cuddly and so nice. And so, to find a way to incorporate him photographically into their wedding day was a little bit of a challenge, because they're in the middle of the wedding, the ceremony, and he's off to the side. And so as I started to frame up this photo using film, and so because I was using the Mamiya, so I was looking down through it, so the camera was really low to the ground, so it actually made it really easy then to position a way that Mosby was in the frame with Kendra behind. And I just kind of waited until Mosby looked across and I could get like his kind of derpy tongue in there. I was like, yes, this is the moment. This is so much of their life coming together. And maybe this isn't the one that is their wedding photo for them, but for me this is kind of like a good summation of their relationship to me, in that it's the two of them together, and Mosby's just always there, just like, hey guys, I'm here too. And so with that, I have a really simple takeaway, which is just to always make sure you get to know my subjects, especially within the wedding context. Is the better I know them, the better I know their story, the better I know their relationship, the better that I'm going to be able to show that with their photos. And I just think this does this is a fun way of doing it. This photo here, this is Jim and Linda Hunt. They're both really, really inspirational people in my life. And Jim was a professor that took me to Central America on a study abroad when I was a senior in college. And then he and Linda together founded an organization called the Krista Foundation for Global Citizenship that supported me while I was living in Peru. And so with that, they've both been just very influential in supporting the trajectory of life that's brought me to where I am right now. And so I was at a conference and they were both there, and as a thank you for both of them, I just wanted to make portraits. And at the time, Linda had, I think she still does, but she's not in as grave of a state, but she had stage 4 cancer. And so we thought that this was probably going to be her last conference. And so with that, I wanted to make these photos that celebrated who she was as a person in the time, using a skill set that I really feel like I came about that I've learned because of their support. And so I have a bunch of portraits of Linda, but on top of that, I also took this one of them together because they also have just such an inspirational love, seeing the two of them together. And even after all these years and a lot of hardships that have brought them to this point, to see them still being together, I just wanted to make that. And so my big takeaway is to take good photos of the people that matter to you, whether that's your grandparents, your parents, or just your family photos. Like taking intentionality to do those, and will make it. You can't go back and make those again. So take advantage of those opportunities you get, and do them well. Do them in a way that you feel is representing and is honoring to the story that these people have. And that's, whether that means like you're using digital, and I used film on this one just because I felt like using the Mamiya added gravity to the photo, and I felt like the colors would fit kind of the historic nature that I wanted these photos to feel, and it helped tell the story, and it's something I'm extremely thankful I have, and I've talked to them, and I know that they're also very thankful that these photos exist. In the middle of the summer, I got to go to a wedding and photograph a wedding in Central Oregon in Sisters, and after the ceremony was over, the couple and I headed out into the middle of the high desert to photograph them as the sun was setting. It was this beautiful, beautiful setting, and we have a lot of kind of the more traditional, normal sunsetty photos that I think I'm pretty good at doing. But on top of that, I was also taking film, and I wanted to do something that was a little bit different, a little bit more conceptual. And so with this, there's so many times I think people think of weddings as like the be-all and the end-all, it's the greatest day of your life. And in reality, it is an important step and an important milestone in your relationship. But I wanted to make a photo that showed that something about the wedding being like the middle, being a point, an important point, but in a longer trajectory. And so with that, I wanted to have the photo of the bride and groom not kissing on either side of them, and to put them into the middle there. And so that with using the triple exposure, so one of them looking then them kissing them, but not trying to indicate like this moment here is an important one, but it's only a point in their relationship together. And so my takeaway on this is to try to come up with ways to be more conceptual. I think I'm very good at reactionary photography, but I'm not very good at thinking of ways to represent things and to think about things a little bit more outside the box. And so it's something I'm trying to study this year, trying to find people who are really good at that and find ways that I can incorporate that better into the work that I'm doing. But yeah, that little bit of intentional conceptuality is something that I want to take forward. For photo 9, it's this engagement photo of Chen and Felicia. And for their engagement session, they wanted to go up and hike up into the core of the Enchantments, which is this beautiful part of Washington. All told, we did about 20 miles of hiking that day, over just thousands of vertical feet change, and it was tough, but it was also just wonderfully beautiful. You might have seen I have a video of their experience. But with that, this is my favorite photo. It was at the end of the day, and they had put on their nice clothes and taken them off, put them on and taken them off. And so this was right as the sun was starting to set, and we knew that this was going to be our last session in there. And they had put their backpacks on because we were trying to show something of like the nice mixed with the hiking aspect of the day. And they'd taken pictures of them both flexing, which is kind of dorky, but it was fun. And they were like, I do it like this. And I was like, okay, and now we give each other a kiss. And in the moment, Chen puts his arms down to kiss Felicia, but she kept her arm up there just as like, I'm this powerful lady, deal with it. And I love that photo, especially because like having someone who weighs like 13 pounds flexing is like beautifully comical, but also just like this power, because she's such a force that to see them together, but also being like, yeah, we're together. But that's right, mother truckers. I love just the joy and the laughter and the silliness, but also just the power that comes with this photo. And also just my takeaway is to remember to keep pushing through things, and that like in the moment I was like, okay, you guys are kind of being dorky, you're both flexing, whatever. Like, you know, I'm trying to find these like more emotive photos and stuff. But then always being able to just tweak it maybe one little step further and just be like, okay, now why don't you do this thing? Why don't you do this thing? And not saying that that's a thing you need to go forever. Like, know when to stop, because that's also super important. But, you know, because then the moment you know you took the photo, like, stop taking photos, because you need your clients to not be, like, dead. But just that little bit more can often get you from, like, a photo that's, like, it's a good photo to being like, this is one I want people to see forever. So for photo number 10, I was in New York photographing the wedding of a good friend of mine who had done the same young adult volunteer program that I did. If you've never heard of the young adult volunteers, it's kind of like the Presbyterian Peace Corps. And at the time I was living in Peru, she was in Guatemala. And so afterwards we just stayed in touch and stuff, and I got to go out to photograph their wedding. And she, on top of inviting people from around the country, she was able to bring her host mom from Guatemala to their wedding. And this photo is simple. It is just two ladies giving each other a hug, but it means so much more to see like the gravity of the relationship, to know the depth that came in there, to see the way that they both supported each other, both in the time that they were living together and also in the years past. You might have heard, I think Benj Heish has a quote, something about like the most epic photos aren't always the most important, and the most important photos always aren't the most epic. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the quote, but like the idea is that like simple photos with the right context means so much more. And so for me to look at this photo, it means so much to me, because it's seeing these extremely important elements of somebody's life coming together into one moment that they get to celebrate. And you know, of course, for me, it makes me think about like my own host family, the people I lived with at the time, and wishing that I'd been able to bring them to my own wedding and all those kind of things. And but it's just a beautiful photo of people being together. I absolutely loved every second of this engagement session. It was just such a wonderful time from the moment we all piled into April and Jenny's Honda Element until the moments that we finished and we're sitting on our back, the tailgate, drinking beers, watching the last bit of the album go fade away. And I just was so honored to get to slowly get to hear people's story and get to see how they interact in a way that, as the session progressed, I felt like I was able to better and better get out of the way of the photo. So often when I'm taking photos, especially at the beginning of a relationship with a couple, with a client, I have to put a lot of myself into their photos. And as time goes along, I want to get better and better at letting them lead and letting myself kind of get out of the way. And I felt like this session, right at this photo, right at the end of their session, when it's one of the last ones before they put their canoe back onto the boat, was a photo where they were able to just be themselves and just hide in the corner and just laugh and to be the happy little couple that they are. And so yeah, that's my big takeaway, is to learn to continue to get to know people better so that I can get out of the way of their photos. I didn't know that whether or not adventure maternity photos was a thing, but I have good friends, Pat and Alicia, and they wanted to go into the mountains and take photos of them with their Jeep and their dog and do an epic thing, which obviously like I went up and I took photos with like a digital camera and did the normal thing, which here's a couple. I think they're pretty cool. But this photo is different because I shot it on my Mamiya at sunset on extremely expired film. I think my takeaway is that experimentation leads you to nuggets you might not have thought of otherwise. And so with this photo, because I was shooting on a camera that had not quite as fast of an aperture and was with really expired film, so I had to overexpose it to compensate for the lack of sensitivity within the film. I had to shoot really slow photos, and so the slow photos then allowed for the movement in her dress that I wouldn't have seen otherwise, and that little bit of like texture and life that I wouldn't have thought of that. It's not something, like I don't do a ton of motion in my photos, or it's usually trying to stop motion. But it made me just see things differently and made me want to try things differently. And so I guess my biggest takeaway on this one is to continue to try stuff. Be different. It's okay. And that's, you might have, this is mostly a film photography channel. But if you're one of my wedding clients, you might be thinking like, does he take normal wedding photos? And of course I do. 95% of what I take is the normal stuff. But it's that 5 extra where you're trying new things. It doesn't always mean that that 5% is going to be the best new thing. And that photo, like this one, I think turned out really, really awesomely. And I hope that it's a photo that they love as much as I do. But it opened my eyes to things I wouldn't have seen otherwise. And so that the next time I'm in a similar situation, that idea is in the back of my mind. So even if I'm not shooting it on a film camera, if I'm, or whatever I'm using, the tools don't matter. But the idea of like, hey, have you ever tried like stopping it down? It's kind of windy. You might be able to get the hair and the dress to kind of like have some motion in it. It shows life in a different way. I might not have thought of that otherwise, but because I have the experimentation, now I have that idea, and I'm going to continue to try that little 5% until that moves from being like that 5% of experimentation till it becomes part of that 95% of like, this is what I do well. And that's one of the things that I love about this photo, is that it's that indication of like, this is what experimentation can lead to. So my big takeaway from this photo is do your homework. I've been finishing the with my takeaway, but let me back it all up and tell you the whole story of this photo. So Michelle and David were planning, we were going to do their engagement shoot. We're going to do a sunset one with lurches. So with that kind of sets like a time of the year, which in the Northwest is going to be kind of the end of September through the middle of October. And then we had some weather windows, and I had traveling, and they had work, and so it was kind of, we got down to like, we only have like 1 or 2 days that we can really work with. And then it snowed, and the weather was going to be terrible. So we had like this terrible, like this extremely small window of what might work that we would be able to do the session. And suddenly the sunset option was out of the picture. So then, because I knew the place we were going to go, I'd done the hike before, I knew where I wanted to go. I also knew where I wanted to be on that hike. What would have the best view for a sunset light, where it would be coming from. So, and I knew that sunset was about at 7 a.m. and I wanted to be on this point. So then using GPS, worked it back down to figure out with how much vertical we needed to change and also the amount of hiking. We figured it would take a little under 2 hours to do that hike. So 7 a.m. sunrise, works us back down to getting out of the car or getting on the trail at about 5 a.m. Well, so the options were either we're going to sleep all together at the trailhead, or we're going to have to drive early. And they had stuff going on, and we didn't know each other super well, so it's a little awkward to like, let's all camp together. So we met in my driveway at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it worked. And it came out better than we could have hoped for. And like as soon as we parked and we were doing the hike up, we knew that the clouds were going to be rolling in overhead, and we could see this line of clouds moving westward, moving towards that sunrise as we were getting the hike. In the first bit, there's that little bit of orange on the horizon. It's super epic. We're also like, I don't know if this is going to hit. And we got up onto the ridge that we were hoping for, and we got there, and we had about 10 minutes of this brilliant sunrise. But because we did our homework and did it right, we were in exactly the right place. We were the only people there, and we were able to make these photos that I think will stand up and are things that are pretty unique. And, I lugged a huge medium format camera up the mountain, and it was totally worth it. So, there's that. And I'm going to finish this off here with, one more Lena photo. Come on, I'm a dad. You can't expect me to just have one favorite photo of my daughter from the year. Come on. This is my favorite Lena photo. This is my other favorite Lena photo just because it's so full of life, and it's such a joyous photo for her of just having fun. And I love that this photo shows that bit of her life and the little bit of joy, and that because I took it on film, this is the piece where I'm going to get a little bit film preachy for a second. And not because, again, I don't think film is better than digital or anything like that. It's a tool. The tool is how you use it. And I think that if you have the right mindset, you can make whatever and however you want. But as I am spending time with my daughter, I want to take photos that show her personality, that show the life that she is, but also I want to take photos that I don't want photo taking to take over our relationship. I don't want it to be a thing that gets between her and I having fun. And so the reason that I like to take film photos of Lena is because I like the fact that I go out there and I'm only going to take 2-3 photos at a time, because each one of those costs money, and each one of those Like, I'm not gonna just sit there and bang out a whole roll and be like, oh, I just wasted $15, you know, between development and film and all that kind of stuff. Like, that gets expensive. So I'm gonna go a little bit more judicious, and then I'm gonna put it away. So I'm gonna go out there. In this one, like, I took 3 or 4 frames in this set of her running around with her stuffed animals on the sunny afternoon having fun, and then I put my camera away, went back to playing with my daughter. And then on top of that, there's the anticipation factor of being able to look forward to seeing these photos. And so sometimes it's been 2-3 months since I took the photo. Now I've totally forgotten what I've taken, and they pop out, and it's just, this is my daughter. Oh, and it makes me so happy. And yeah, like, I screw up way more because I can't look in the back of the camera. I don't know if I took the photo right, and that's okay. That's why I keep taking more of those, because in a given year, I only want to have 2. And you know, these 2 photos I'm showing here, there's another 3 or 4 in here, but I don't have more than 1 photo per month that I feel like is really screams Lena. I took 100 photos of her per month, but that ratio, that continuing to try and then to put it away and go back to having life with her, is just a balance that I find to be really rewarding, and a thing that works really well for us. So I'm going to stop there. I doubt very many of you have made it all the way into this deep in this video, and I'm very impressed if you did. Thank you very much for watching. I promise next time I won't go so long or talk so much or have as many photos, but actually I don't promise that.